Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. Guess what? We have the weekly recap of all the top stories throughout the week, all conveniently located in one location. That's right. I know you want to watch all the daily shows, but maybe you got busy. We're going to give you the highlights right here. Hope you enjoy it. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.
All right, lawyer.
So let's talk first a little bit more about Bryan Kohberger. Some more details are coming out. Now, everybody who's been following this case knows that on July 3rd, Bryan Kohberger pled guilty to the murders of 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, in somewhat of a controversial plea that spared him the death penalty if he was ultimately convicted. Now, the killings, which occurred back in November of 22 there in Moscow, Idaho, obviously shocked the small community. But new details from the victims' families and prosecutors reveal the horrific nature of the attacks, including severe physical violence inflicted on Kaylee Goncalves by Bryan Kohberger. So, Christy Goncalves, Kaylee's mother, disclosed some harrowing details about her daughter's final moments in a statement on the family's Facebook page. She revealed that Kaylee sustained severe facial and head injuries, with evidence indicating she fought desperately to defend herself against Kohberger. Now, the attack occurred on the 3rd floor of the victim's off-campus residence, where Kohberger stabbed both Goncalves and Mogen, who were sleeping in the same bed. Now, a knife sheath left beside Mogen's body contained both victims' blood and DNA from a single male, later identified as Bryan Kohberger. Now, the prosecutor detailed the sequence of events during Kohberger's plea hearing, right? And we know that Kohberger entered the house through the sliding kitchen door shortly after 4 a.m., targeting the 3rd floor. After killing Goncalves and Mogen, he then encountered Miss Kernodle, who was awake after ordering DoorDash. And then Kohberger stabbed her to death. He then killed Chapin, Kernodle's boyfriend, who was sleeping in her room. 2 other roommates, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, survived. Now, Mortensen was expected to testify about seeing the intruder with the bushy eyebrows wearing black clothes and a ski mask. Now, Thompson presented what he described as the evidence that would be presented at trial that led to Kohberger's identification. Now, a Q-tip retrieved from Kohberger's parents' garbage in Pennsylvania provided a DNA match to the knife sheath. Surveillance footage and cell phone data placed Kohberger's vehicle and phone in the area multiple times before the crime, with his phone pinging local towers some 23 times between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. over 4 months. And on the night of the murders, Kohberger's car was captured speeding away from the scene, nearly losing control. Now, his apartment and vehicles were meticulously cleaned, described as Spartan, and disassembled inside, indicating an elaborate cover-up. Kohberger, a graduate student in criminal justice, had studied crime scene processing, which Thompson suggested informed his actions. Now, his familiarity with the area and methodical approach complicated the investigation, but DNA evidence and persistent police work ultimately led to his arrest at his parents' home there in Pennsylvania. Now, the plea deal, which sentenced Kohberger to 4 consecutive life terms without parole and waives his right to an appeal, has divided the victim's family. The Goncalves family vehemently opposed the agreement, with Christie criticizing prosecutors for not notifying them via letter and arguing that life on death row would have been a harsher punishment. He didn't show Kaylee any mercy, she wrote, questioning public perceptions of their pursuit of justice versus vengeance. Kaylee's sister, Aubrey, expressed frustration that Kohberger could still engage with the world while their loved ones were silent forever. In contrast, the Chapin and Mogen families supported the deal, expressing hope for healing. Now, the agreement avoids a lengthy trial, sparing the families further emotional strain, but leaves unanswered questions about Kohberger's motive and why he targeted the victims, who appeared to be strangers to him. So, a lot of unsolved questions, and despite the detailed evidence, Kohberger's motives remained unclear. Now, Thompson noted in his recitation of facts that no direct evidence linked Cobberger to the victim or their residence, though his phone frequent presence in the area suggested premeditation. Then we have some sealed court documents, including witness lists and evidence analysis, may contain additional insights but remain inaccessible until after Cobberger's sentencing date on July 23rd. And a gag order continues to limit the attorneys from speaking out as well. Now, Cobberger will have an opportunity to speak at his sentencing, but is not required to do so, potentially leaving his reasons undisclosed. We'll see if he makes a statement in allocution, ladies and gentlemen. He's entitled to the last word. I don't think he's going to say the words, "I'm sorry." I guess we'll all find out at the same time. So this case, obviously resolved through a plea, marks Cobberger now as one of the most notorious mass murders, while the Moscow community and victims' families grapple with enduring impact of the tragedy. New details. I mean, this was not a pleasant thing. I said this probably last week. This guy has some pent up issues, and I'm sure it involves women, obviously. Maybe he was rejected. Maybe she didn't look at him one way. Maybe he just became infatuated. This guy is simply not wired correctly, ladies and gentlemen. And by his own words and admission, he's killed 4 people. He is a bad, bad man. There is no redeeming quality. Obviously, that's what makes the death penalty potentially available when, jurors decide whether somebody has even a scintilla of redeemable qualities. But that'll never be resolved, obviously, because it's been resolved in the way of a plea deal. So we're just going to have to wait and see if there's a statement of allocution. I'm sure more statements are going to come out, and I think it's going to be even more horrific than what we already know. What we're starting to learn, I think the brutality of this is just going to simply show, once again, this guy's not wired right. And it also shows the brutality of man. And no matter how you want to couch it, there are some people that simply cannot live amongst us in a civilized society. Let's talk about the Frasier Bomb case, a tragic crash or murder. So let's go back to October 17th of 2023. There was a catastrophic collision on the Malibu Coast Highway in Malibu, California, and it claimed the lives of 4 Pepperdine University seniors: Nyama Rolston, Peyton Stewart, Asha Weir, and Deslin Williams. Now, the driver, Frasier Bomb, then 22 years old, faces 4 counts of murder and 4 counts of vehicular manslaughter by gross negligence. Let's go through and give a quick overview of the facts surrounding the incident, the legal proceedings, and the arguments that are going to be presented. All right. So like I said, the crash occurred back on July 8th. It was about 8:30 p.m., so not particularly late, in the 21600 block of Pacific Coast Highway, a notorious stretch known to locals as Dead Man's Curve due to its sharp bend and history of accidents. Now, the 4 victims, all seniors at Pepperdine, Seavers College of Liberal Arts, and members of the Alpha Phi sorority, were standing on the shoulder near the parked vehicles when Bomb's 2016 BMW, allegedly traveling at a high rate of speed, veered onto the north shoulder. The vehicle struck at least 3 parked cars, which then collided with the students, killing them instantly. The victims, aged between 20 and 21, and they were all awarded their degrees posthumously in the Pepperdine class of 2024. Now, prosecutors allege that Bomb was driving at speeds of up to 104 miles per hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone, based on the data retrieved from the BMW's event data recorder, commonly referred to as the black box. Now, the deputy district attorney, Nathan Bartos, emphasized that Bomb accelerated from 93 miles an hour to 104 miles an hour in the 2.5 seconds before the first of the 3 impacts, demonstrating a reckless disregard for human life. Now, the Los Angeles County District Attorney at the time, George Gascon, described the act as senseless, asserting that the speed at Bomb's familiarity with the road's dangers justify the murder charge under an implied malice theory. That's basically what we refer to here as extreme indifference. It's like shooting a bullet down a crowded street. It's an extreme indifference to the value of human life and knowing that somebody could get killed. Victor Calandra testified that he observed Bomb driving erratically, swerving between lanes, and possibly texting at traffic lights prior to the crash. Now, Calandra attempted to warn Bomb, shouting, "You need to be careful. You're going to hurt yourself," but received no response. A moment later, after Bomb's BMW accelerated rapidly from the light, Calandra came up upon the crash scene where he confronted a discombobulated bomb and escorted him to sit on an embankment until authorities arrived. Another witness, Miguel Krunchenko, corroborated Calendra's account, noting Bomb's high speed and lane changes before the collision. Needless to say, he was arrested and charged. And he was initially arrested on October 17th for gross vehicular manslaughter, but was released to allow further investigation on the case. Then on October 24th, he was rearrested for a felony complaint, adding 4 counts of murder, reflecting the prosecution's view that his actions constituted implied malice. Bomb pleaded not guilty at his arraignment on October 25th, 2023. His bail, initially set at $8 million, was reduced to $4 million, which his affluent family posted quite promptly, allowing his release on October 27th of 2023. Now, the case proceeded through several preliminary hearings at the Van Nuys Superior Court, presided over by Judge Diego Edber. And then on March 17th, Bomb's then defense attorney, Michael Kraut, filed a motion to dismiss the murder charges, arguing that Bomb was unfairly targeted due to media scrutiny and community pressure, particularly from the Pepperdine University. Kraut cited that the case of Summer Wheaton, who faced lesser charges for a DUI-related fatal crash, to claim discriminatory prosecution. The judge denied that motion, stating that the defense failed to provide sufficient evidence of a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. And then from April 28th to April 30th of 2025, a preliminary trial featured emotional testimony from witnesses, including from Caldron, Cronicho, and the Sheriff Deputy Robert Apodaca, who used advanced technology like the Faro 3D scanner to document the crash scene. The prosecution presented black box data while Kraut challenged its accuracy, claiming Bomb was traveling only at 70 miles an hour, not 104 miles an hour, and therefore, I guess it's all okay. Anyway, and that warning about the data's reliability were ignored. Then on April 30th, 2025, the judge ordered Bomb to stand trial with an arraignment scheduled for July 1st of 2025. And then guess what happens? On July 1st, 2025, Bomb appeared in court with a new defense attorney. Who was it? Alan Jackson. That's right. The high-profile lawyer who replaced Mr. Kraut. That's right, Alan Jackson of the Karen Reed fanfare. Citing his recent involvement in the case, requested a 30-day continuance to review the charges and the discovery, which the court granted. Now the matter is reset for an arraignment in August of this year. Now, Mr. Bomb remains free on bail, accompanied by family and supporters who have declined any media comment. Defense attorney Kraut claimed that another driver, possibly Calendra, aggressively confronted Bomb at a traffic light near Duke's Malibu restaurant, which was, who hasn't been there, loves the place. Anyway, prompting Bomb to accelerate to escape. Bomb himself told investigators that there was a white car that swerved into his lane, striking his driver's side mirror, causing him to lose control and hit the parked vehicle. However, a female driver of a white Honda Civic reported seeing a car going really fast, but denied contact with Bomb's BMW, and her vehicle showed no damage. Anyway, the defense attorney then, Kraut, emphasized that Bomb's clean record, no prior traffic citations, no alcohol, and no drugs in his system, as confirmed by toxicology tests. He portrayed Bomb as a cooperative 20-year-old kid caught in a tragic situation, not a malicious actor. The defense also questioned the rapid filing of murder charges, noting that such investigations typically take months, suggesting a political motivation tied to media attention and an election year. Well, the case has sparked obviously significant debate, amplified by media coverage and online exposure. A lot of people have questioned the murder charges, pointing to inconsistencies in witness accounts and alleging that Bomb did not attempt to flee. Contrary to early posts that he was tackled by Pepperdine Sigma Chi fraternity members. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? You don't like the charging decision? Those are legal issues that are brought up when you go to the preliminary hearing. The judge has a view to lighten the evidence most favorable to the prosecution, so it's not going to go away. It's a question of fact for trial. Oh, you overcharged the case. He seems like such a good kid, and I really, really like his attorney. He should get a better deal. Count them, ladies and gentlemen. 1, 2, 3, 4 dead people because of the accident that he allegedly caused. On the civil side, right, to be the proximate cause that but for his actions, these injuries would not have resulted, or deaths in this particular case. Criminal, extreme indifference. You knew of a dangerous situation and you ignored it, and it caused the death of these people. Now, maybe the jury will find that it's murder. Maybe they'll find that it's manslaughter, but that's ultimately for a jury to decide if there's no plea bargain in this particular situation. General rule is, ladies and gentlemen, most DAs look at it. If there's a dead body, somebody's got to go to prison, at least for a little while. Okay? Just kind of the way it is. That's their general rule that they operate on. I'm giving you all the inside scoop here, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, the Bomb family, fortunately, is wealthy. And according to their $8.7 million Malibu estate and the BMW gifted to Bomb on his 18th birthday, has drawn some scrutiny, with some critics arguing that their affluence facilitated the release on bail. Well, of course it did. They posted a $4 million bond. That's what happens. You can get out. You can get out when you do that. That's a good thing about being rich. You can get out of custody. Unless, of course, you're like Diddy. But maybe he'll get out. But you know what I'm saying? That's part of being rich. You're able to get out on bond, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, that contrasts with broader discussions about bail reform and blah, 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 which, like I said, Bomb gets a $4 million bail, whereas less affluent defendants often remain incarcerated for lesser offenses. What can I say? That's just the way it is, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a danger to the community and a flight risk, they keep you in jail. Unless, of course, you can post enough property to keep you here, because most people don't want to lose $4 million, and you don't want mom and dad's $4 million to disappear if you skip bond. That's the rationale behind it. If you've got nothing, you got no ties to the community, you're more than likely a flight risk, at least in the eyes of the law. And you say, well, where does that come up? Well, it comes through hundreds of years of dealing with people have been in the legal system, and they've just figure out that if you have no ties to the community and you're facing serious charges, you're going to walk on down the street and get out of Dodge and make it difficult for them to find you. Just common sense. Anyway, so as of July 8th, this case is awaiting the rescheduled arraignment in August. And like I said, it's anticipated that old Alan Jackson is going to continue to challenge the reliability of that black box data and the road rage narrative. And the prosecution is saying that the speed and the reckless driving in a known dangerous area warrant the murder charges. Obviously, if Mr. Bomb is convicted, he can face multiple sentences of life. So there you go. Now, the victim's family, who's attended hearings in silence, continue to seek justice, while the Pepperdine community honors the memories of Ralston, Stewart, Weir, and Williamson through their vigils and their posthumous recognition. Anyway, what can you say, ladies and gentlemen? That little stretch of highway, absolutely beautiful. Pepperdine, beautiful, beautiful campus. I went there for a college visit once with my daughter. She went to a little college down the road called Chapman University. Great school. Listen, the best thing about California is the weather. It's perfect and 82 every day. Just everything else about it that sucks. But we love you. We love you, California. Taxes. I couldn't wait for the expense. I couldn't wait for my daughter to leave California. It's expensive. Bryan Kohberger trying to answer why. So let me give you a little background for all the people who haven't been following the story. But if you're CrimeTalk aficionado, you've been here a while, you're familiar with the facts, but there's a lot of people that aren't familiar that are just tuning in. So let's do a quick recap. So back on November 13th of 2022, 4 University of Idaho students, Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were brutally stabbed to death in their off-campus home at 1122 King Road. They're in Moscow, Idaho. The perpetrator, and we know this to be true, Bryan Kohberger, a now 30-year-old former criminology PhD student, he pled guilty on July 2nd to those 4 counts of murder and 1 count of burglary, accepting 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. So let's consider some insights with various reports exploring Kohberger's background, his potential motives, the role of his academic studies, his likely future in prison, and the potential risks he may face as a target in prison. Boo-hoo. All right, first, let's talk about his academic journey, right? Kohberger's academic path was steeped in study of criminal behavior. Beginning back in 2018, he pursued a degree in psychology with a forensic track at DeSalle University in Pennsylvania, later earning a master's degree in criminal justice in 2022. He then enrolled in the PhD program in criminology at Washington State University, conveniently located near Moscow, Idaho. And at DeSalle University, Cobberger studied under Dr. Catherine Ramsland, a renowned forensic psychologist known for her work with the serial killer Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK killer. Now, Dr. Ramsland's courses, such as psychological sleuthing, expose students to simulated crime scenes and real-life cases studied of notorious killers, including Ted Bundy, Elliot Rogers as well. Now, Cobberger engaged deeply with the material described by classmates, a guy by the name of Josh Ferraro and Brittany Slavin, as diligent, intelligent, but socially reserved, particularly around women. Now, Ferraro noted that Cobberger was reluctant to engage in small talk, while Slavin recalled his quiet demeanor with no overt red flags indicating some sort of violent tendency. Well, Cobberger's coursework included analyzing the motives and methods of killers, and in 2022 he posted a Reddit survey targeting ex-convicts, asking questions like, why did you choose the victims and how did you leave the scene? Around the same time, he ordered a K-bar knife with a 7-inch blade, later identified as the murder weapon. Now, these actions raised some serious questions about whether his studies may have influenced his actions. Now, Dr. Ramsland, reflecting on her role, expressed concern in a July 2nd, 2025 interview that she gave, stating, quote, I have to look at the framework of what I taught and wonder, did I inspire him in some way, end quote. However, she later clarified in an email, quote, please do not represent me as thinking I planted the seeds. Some, quote, students enter because they're already inclined, end quote. So, Dr. Carol Lieberman, a forensic psychiatrist, proposes a motive rooted in Cobberger's personal history of rejection. She highlights the physical resemblance between the victim, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Gonzalez, and Kim Kennelly, a middle school cheerleader who apparently rejected Cobberger's advances. Now, Kennelly's mother recalled Cobberger leaving, quote, love letters, end quote, and making awkward declarations met with dismissive responses. Lieberman suggests Cobberger's rage from this and subsequent rejections, such as a disturbing 2015 Tinder date incident, culminated in a revenge killing targeting women who symbolized his unattainable desires. Lieberman draws parallels to Elliot Rogers, the 2014 Isla Vista killer, whose incel manifesto, studied in Cobberger's classes, railed against women for rejecting him. And Cobberger's victim, particularly Mogen and Gonzalez, were outgoing, blonde members of the Greek life there on campus, mirroring Rogers' targets. Cobberger's behavior, such as following Mogen and Gonzalez on Instagram, messaging them, and visiting their workplace, suggests premeditation. Cell phone data obviously indicates his device pinged near the victim's home some 23 times in the 2 months prior, often at night. Now, this theory also further fuels speculation of a social media account named Papa Roger, which posted in a Facebook group about the Idaho murders. Specifically, on November 30th, 2022, the account referenced a large fixed blade knife and a sheath, details later confirmed by police. The account's cartoon icon resembles Cobberger, and its posts ceased after his arrest in December 30th of 2022. Jumping back to the classmate Ferraro, noted that Cobberger's studies covered killers returning to the crime scene, digitally or physically, suggesting the account could reflect Cobberger's reliving his crime. So we do know Cobberger entered the victim's home through a sliding kitchen door about 4 a.m., targeting the third floor where Mogen and Gonzalez slept. Prosecutors believe he intended to kill one or both women, but encountered Kernodle and Chapin as well. killing them to eliminate witnesses. 2 housemates, though, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, were unharmed. Now, the crime scene was described as profoundly bloody, with multiple stab wounds as defensive injuries as well. A knife sheath with Kohberger's DNA was a critical piece of evidence in, obviously, his guilty plea. Now, after his arrest in Pennsylvania, Cobberger was extradited to Idaho, and Dr. Ramsland reportedly advised his family against delaying extradition, though she denied extensive involvement. Then on July 2nd, 2025, Cobberger's guilty plea spared him the death penalty, a decision that Lieberman criticized, noting his flippant and defiant demeanor during the hearing, showing a complete lack of remorse. So, we talked about this a little bit the other day, but where does Cobberger go from here? So, Kohberger's sentencing is scheduled for July 23rd, with prosecutors recommending the 4 fixed life sentences. Post-sentencing, he'll undergo a 2 weeks of physical, mental, and educational assessment at the Idaho Reception and Diagnostic Unit. That's where they decide where they're going to place him. He is likely to serve his sentence at the Idaho Maximum Security Institution in Boise, which houses close custody inmates and death row prisoners like Chad Daybell, who just happened to be convicted of murdering his wife and his new wife's children. Bad guy as well. The Idaho Maximum Security Institution there has 549 residents, and they're primarily in solitary confinement, minimizing interaction. However, Cobberger could be sent to the Seguro Correctional Center in Arizona, as was another Idaho murderer, Marijan Kaler. Now, given the high-profile nature of the crimes and the media attention surrounding the case, Cobberger may face significant risks as a target in prison. Inmates convicted of violent crimes against young victims, particularly, children, women, often attract hostility from other prisoners who adhere to an informal code that views such acts as reprehensible. Now, Cobberger's background as a criminology student who used his knowledge to commit murder could further elevate his notoriety, making him a potential target for violence of harassment. Now, at the facility in Idaho, where most inmates are in solitary confinement, the risk of direct physical confrontation is probably going to be reduced. However, if placed in a facility with a more general population, interaction such as in the facility in Arizona, where the state has a contract with, Cobberger safety could be a little more precarious. Prison authorities will likely consider these factors during his placement evaluation, potentially opting for protective custody or segregation to mitigate threats. So obviously this whole case raises some serious questions about the impact of studying this criminal behavior. Dr. Ramsland's curriculum, while intended to train future law enforcement professionals, may attract individuals with a little darker inclinations, couldn't it? Anyway, his classmates expressed hope that Cobberger's education was not a deliberate step towards murder, but acknowledged he took it completely the wrong way and twisted it. And the parallels to Rogers and Bundy, coupled with Cobberger's own actions, suggest a complex interplay of personal grievances, his academic exposure, and psychological factors. Now, for the victim's family, Dr. Lieberman's theories aims to provide closure, emphasizing that the murders were not due to the victim's actions, but Cobberger's distorted perceptions. As Cobberger faces a lifetime behind bars, his case will likely be studied someday by criminology students themselves. The irony of it, isn't it crazy? Let's face it, guy's not wired right, gets rejected by women, he hates women, he finds one that looks like the old girlfriend, and then he goes and kills them, everybody else in the path. Ladies and gentlemen, some people just aren't wired right. They really aren't. And he can try to excel, to, make it look like he's getting along with everybody, but some people they're just not wired right, ladies and gentlemen. And they're going to wind up there. And, it's tough to say. Obviously he had issues growing up as a kid, and that can certainly shape your future, but it doesn't mean you need to go around killing people. Let's face it, we all know lots of people that were awkward with the girls in junior high and high school, but they didn't go and kill anybody. Now, did they? So Can't wait for the 23rd. Can't get here fast enough. But obviously all the theories now of what happened and why, which are legitimate reasons. I think the girls rejected him, found out that, he's a little guy or something, and he just couldn't deal with it. We'll just leave it at that. Next, a jury finds Raul Valle not guilty. So, back in March of 2022, a fight occurred at a house party in Shelton, Connecticut, involving approximately 25 teenagers. Raul Valle, then 16 years old and a student at the St. Joseph High School in Trumbull, was alleged to have brandished a switchblade-style knife and instigated the altercation. And during the incident, Valle stabbed James McGrath, a 17-year-old lacrosse player at Fairfield College Preparatory School, once in the heart, resulting in McGrath's death. Now, Valle also stabbed 3 other individuals, Ryan Hines 3 times, including a puncture to the lung, Thomas Connery 4 times in the leg, and Faison Teal once in the arm. The 3 injured individuals were transported to the hospital. Valle was subsequently charged with murder in McGrath's deaths and assault for the injuries to Hines, Teal, and Connery. Now, during the 3-week trial in the Superior Court in Milford, Connecticut, witnesses reported to police that Valle had displayed the knife prior to the fight and initiated the conflict. Prosecutors presented evidence that Valle stabbed McGrath in the heart, Hines 3 times with a lung puncture, Connery 4 times in the leg, and Teal once in the arm. Valle testified that he received the knife from a friend, felt overwhelmed during the skirmish, swung the blade in multiple directions without intent to kill, and experienced a brief blackout. Valle's defense argued that the actions constituted self-defense. Well, following 2 days of deliberation, the jury delivered a partial verdict acquitting Valle of murder, intentional manslaughter, first-degree reckless assault, and second-degree reckless assault. The jury remained deadlocked on the charges of reckless first-degree manslaughter in McGrath's deaths, 2 counts of reckless first-degree assault, and 1 count of second-degree reckless assault related to the other stabbings, resulting in a mistrial on those counts. Now, Valle had previously rejected a plea deal offering 40 years in prison and faced a potential sentence of up to 105 years if he was convicted on all charges. Prosecutors indicated they intend to refile the deadlocked charges. All right, let's get to the Bryan Kohberger and the recent developments. So in the ongoing saga of the Idaho student murders, recent events have brought some significant closure to the case that obviously has captivated the public going back to November of 2022. Bryan Kohberger, the now former criminal PhD student at Washington State University, has been convicted of the brutal stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Madison Mogan. Now, that incident took place back in November of 2022 at their off-campus residence there in Moscow, Idaho, where Kohberger killed after he entered the home and attacked the victims with a fixed blade knife. Now, prosecutors indicated that Kohberger planned the assault for months, evidenced by his purchase of a K-bar knife back in March of 2022 and the DNA trace evidence from a knife sheath left at the scene, which coincidentally matched Bryan Kohberger. What are the odds? Anyway, he was arrested 6 weeks later at his parents' home in Pennsylvania with no apparent prior connection to the victims and an undisclosed motive. We talked about that yesterday. Go check out that video. Anyway, a pivotal development unfolded last week when Kohberger entered a guilty plea to 4 counts of the first-degree murder as part of the plea agreement to avoid the death penalty. Now, under the terms of the deal, Kohberger is going to receive a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, and he waived his rights to appeal or seek any reduction or post-conviction relief at all. Notably, the plea did not compel Kohberger to provide further details about the actions or motivations, leaving many questions unanswered. Now, sentencing is scheduled for July 23rd, during which the victim's family will have the opportunity to deliver their victim impact statements. Now, the resolution has divided the families. Obviously, the Chapin and the Mogan families support the plea deal, while the Gonzalez and the Kernodle families have expressed absolute opposition, seeking greater accountability and potential confession. Now, that's simply not going to happen, so it is what it is. Now, among the proceedings, a court hearing has now been set for July 17th at 10:30 before Judge Hippler there in Ada County, and this session is to be conducted via Zoom to address a motion to vacate the non-dissemination order that we discussed yesterday. Obviously, this order has restricted the public dissemination of case-related information. Now, the notice filed on July 10th lists the state of Idaho as plaintiff and Cobberger, obviously, as the defendant, with service extended to various legal representatives, including Cobberger's counsel and the prosecutors. Now, if granted, the court could lift constraints on media coverage and public disclosure, potentially allowing for more transparent updates as it relates to the evidence that the prosecution had as the sentencing date approaches. Now, we are getting a little bit more information as it relates to the family perspective as the sentencing date does approach closer. Stacy and Jim Chapin, parents of victim Ethan Chapin, recounted their final joyful moments with their son during a parents' weekend at the University of Idaho back in November of 2022. Accompanied by Ethan's triplet siblings, Maisie and Hunter, the family celebrated their children's independence only to face, obviously, the unimaginable loss just a week later. The Chapins have attended Cobberger's recent plea hearing, expressing support for the deal as a means to expedite the closure. Now, Kara Northington, mother of Xana Kernodle, initially grappled with frustration over the lack of answers, but ultimately found solace in the plea, viewing it as a protective measure against prolonged appeals and further emotional strain. She described the outcome as a blessing, aligning with her faith and her desire to shield her family from extended trauma. Now, emerging discussions have also explored potential factors influencing Cobberger's mental state, including a rare neurological condition known as visual snow syndrome. Now, this disorder, which Cobberger has publicly described as disorienting his vision like static on a television or a video game, may be shared with, guess who? That's right, Luigi Mangione, another individual linked to high-profile crimes, obviously. Allegedly. Anyway, symptoms of this VSS include persistent visual disturbances, light sensitivity, migraines, brain fog, anxiety, depression, and depersonalization, which can lead to significant distress and isolation and sensory overload. And while no cure exists, management options such as medications, blue light blockers, and stress release practices like yoga may alleviate the symptoms. Now, experts caution that the VSS alone does not explain criminal behavior, emphasizing the need for a comprehensive clinical context. Now, speculation surrounding Cobberger's motivation has further intensified, with theories tying him to the involuntary celibate incel subculture. Reports highlight his fascination with Elliot Rodger, the 2014 Isla Vista mass killer who targeted individuals out of resentment towards women and perceived romantic rejection. Cobberger studied Rodger in a college course on serial killers and was noted by peers for his unusual interest in the case. Allegations suggest Cobberger may have operated online under a pseudonym, Papa Roger, in a Facebook group discussing the Idaho murders, posting details about the crime, such as the knife sheath, not yet public at the time. The profile ceased activity as it was deleted following his arrest, fueling suspicion of his involvement. Now, while unconfirmed, these elements contribute to a much broader inquiry whether incel ideology played a role in the murders. This incel ideology is that basically you're celibate, more than likely because you couldn't get a date to save your life, like a Bryan Kohberger type of situation. As this case nears its conclusion, it underscores the profound impact on violent crime on families and the communities, while raising enduring questions about motive, mental health, and justice. And with the upcoming hearing and sentencing, further insight may emerge, offering a measure of resolution in this tragic chapter. Listen, everyone's always going to come up with an excuse. It's called mitigation. Mitigation is anything that will reduce the possible punishment. It's not a defense. Not a defense at all. Could be you had a crappy childhood. You suffer from depression. That may sway a prosecutor somewhere along the line, but it doesn't excuse it. It's not a defense to anything. And I don't think we're going to hear a word. I don't think we're going to hear a peep out of Bryan Kohberger. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe he'll give a complete confession and apologize to the families. But somehow I think he's going to say he has nothing left to say other than bring it on.